Lizzie Fletcher, Democrat of Texas, is representing the 7th District in the Houston area. The Congresswoman was born and raised there and was practicing law before winning her seat to the U.S. House. She is the first Democrat to represent the district.
The 7th Congressional District in Houston is a really exciting place to be from. It's full of dynamic change. I was born in the 70s, grew up in Houston in the 80s, and of course we were really experiencing some tough times in the early 80s, and I really saw the city recover and rebound and really expand and diversify our economy. And so it's a place where I always believed that you could be and do anything. It's a community where there's no problem we can't solve. And that's a big part of how I see the world and a big part of why I'm here, because we in Houston know how to solve problems and we work together to do it, and we'd like to see Congress doing a little bit more of that. And so that's how I wound up here.
Were your parents Houstonians as well?
Yes, for the most part. My mom's a native Houstonian, and my family on her side goes back several generations. My dad was actually born in Houston, but also spent time growing up in Midland, Texas, but moved back to Houston to go to Rice University. So very strong Houston connection, and of course, the city has just continued to grow. We welcome people from around the country and around the world, and we're excited when they want to be in Houston. So it's great to have those longtime Houston ties, but it's exciting to be from a place that's just excited you're there.
What did your parents do for a living?
So my dad is a lawyer, and I followed in his footsteps. And my mom was involved, and she took over her father's company when he died. And so she had a background doing some other things, but wound up taking over his company and did all kinds of interesting things with real estate and building materials, actually. So we have my family, my great-grandparents had a brickyard, and they used to make bricks. And so one of the things that's really cool is that when you look around the city, you'll see that literally brick by brick, we've been involved in the building of the city since the early days.
What inspired you to go into law?
Well, I always had an interest in public policy, and I was a history major in college, and I was trying to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, and this was actually great advice I got from my dad. I didn't always take his advice, probably more often than not I didn't take it, but I was thinking about what I wanted to do for a profession and had been working for several years before I decided to go to law school. And talking to my dad, he said, well, if you're interested in public policy and you're interested in history, like, law is history and law is public policy, and if you want to do those things, if that's what's interesting to you, you should be a lawyer. So it was great advice, and it's definitely been true. This is a little bit different spin on being a lawyer, becoming a lawmaker, but it really is true that I had such exposure to so many different people and industries and issues in my community by being a lawyer and having the privilege of representing people in individual cases. And now I have the privilege of representing them as a group here in Congress. It's really exciting.
What kind of lawyer were you?
So I did business litigation, and I worked on cases of all types. So from small mom and pop shops with some real estate challenges, various issues, all the way up to multinational corporations and litigation all over the country. And it really was a great education, especially for our community, working with different segments of industry, working with healthcare providers, working with people in the energy industry, which of course Houston is the energy capital of the world. And so getting exposure to the kinds of things that people do and the kinds of challenges they face, I think has been a great preparation for me to come here and represent them.
Why did you decide to make this leap to Washington, D.C. and become a lawmaker?
Well, for me, it really was a direct result of the 2016 election. I felt after that election like things were not on track. And what I saw, especially in Congress, as well as from the executive branch, was that there were a lot of people who were not getting things done and not working together. And that's not how we do things in Houston, and I felt like we needed to get some people in the room who were going to be the responsible adults in the room. I didn't feel like we saw a lot of that as we watched the transition with the Trump administration, and I really think that what we want to see is our government working efficiently and working for all of us. And I looked around and thought, well, you know, where are all the grown-ups? And then I realized that that's me. I'm one of them. And that it was time, that I'd had incredible training and incredible opportunity to get to know people from across my community and to represent them, and that I was ready to take this leap and represent them here and really try to bring the spirit of our community to Washington and try to make this place work a little bit more like Houston.
You are a part of a record number of women who have joined this 116th Congress. Why do you think that's an important voice?
Well, it's a huge part of why I ran, because I felt like my own voice wasn't being heard, and the voices of women. And you see it in all sorts of policy issues that came up time and again in the last couple of years. But throughout our history, there have been issues where we would really benefit from having women at the table. And I think there's a real benefit to having a diversity of voices at the table. Women, men, people from different backgrounds, different parts of the country. I mean, our Congress was designed that way, to have representation across the 50 states, because the idea, obviously, wasn't 50 at the time, but the idea is that people come with different perspectives. And I think that it's really important to see different and to hear them out and to listen. And I do think that the women that I've met in this Congress tend to be very collegial, very collaborative. That's been my experience working, and I'm optimistic that having so many women in Congress, we will find that this Congress is collaborative and that we're able to get a lot done.
Do you have a female role model?
Well, there's so many. I grew up in Texas, and so Ann Richards was our governor. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was growing up in Houston, the mayor of Houston was also a woman named Kathy Whitmire. And watching them, I really had a sense that women could be and do anything. So watching them has been incredible. I think Ann Richards was such an inspiration to so many of us, just looking out for us, but sassy and fun, and smart as a whip. And I think that's important. But there's so many women that have been personally involved in my life and have been mentors, and probably the person I admire the most is my own mother, who is just a phenomenal person who manages to take care of everyone else and at the same time really contribute to our community. And I just feel like I have been so lucky to know and learn from so many great women, and especially in this class. I mean, I look around at my classmates and the women in Congress, and I'm excited to get to work with them and learn from them.
Any advice that your mom gave you over the years, or when you won this seat, that you remember and carry with you?
Well, she gave me a lot of advice. The advice that my dad gave me that I mentioned was really good for going off to law school. But my mom just really shaped me and I think guided my worldview about what our priorities should be, and that we should put other people first, and that we should do what we can to be helpful, and that we should always be able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and appreciate where they're coming from. I think it's a really important skill. It's something you learn to do as a lawyer, put yourself in somebody else's shoes and represent them and be their voice. And now I'm able to do that for my entire community, and it's really important to put that forward. So I think there's so much advice that she's given me over time that has really, I think, shaped who I am and why I'm here.